Alrighty. Alright, hello everybody, welcome to the stream. Today, my name is SenseiSuplex, and we have the likes of the D&D Sensei show. We have a bunch of awesome content creators and dungeon masters here to help everyone, and everyone included watching the likes of this video, or the Twitch stream, or anyone around the entire D&D community to enhance and bring their games to that of the next level. That is the theme of the stream. We are trying to improve as we have, again, awesome, fantastic individuals that I've either had the pleasure to meet beforehand, or we're actually just meeting them for actually today. So without further ado, let's get straight into the show and let's get to talking and hanging out. I'm gonna swap overlays and we're gonna get straight into this. Bam. And hello! They can all see your lovely faces. Look at that.
Hey.
How's it going, everybody? How's it going?
Going great. Happy to be here.
Awesome stuff. So here, I'm gonna quickly just go around the entire sort of quote-unquote table and let every last one of our guests introduce themselves. Everybody knows who I am, and I'll probably do introductions if you don't know who I am later, but who cares about me? Let's go to the guests. Let's start us off with Jordan. You want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I'm Jordan. I also go by Flutes as part of the Flutesloot YouTube channel and flutesloot.com. My wife and I create content along with other guest writers, and once anyone else who wants to jump in on our website basically and has the competency, I guess, to write quickly and not make me have to use Grammarly too much. Why am I talking about this? We write stuff and we make videos. And yeah, so we're kind of a variety. We're not YouTubers who have like a niche, I'd say. We really just do whatever we feel like making videos about. And I also have a background in improv, which Sensei has interviewed me about before, so I love talking about that as well.
Heck yeah. Glad to have you here, Jordan or Flutes. I said, let's go over to Taryn if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I am Taryn, Indestructible Boy of Hounds, mostly a game designer, kind of made a name for myself over on the Dungeon Masters Guild, designed the Merchant, Dancer, Alchemist, Runekeeper, and now the Vanguard classes. So I've got some bestsellers over there, and actually just won an Ennie. Well, we got a silver Ennie for Home Field Advantage, and just kind of do a lot of game design stuff over on my channel. It's also, I'm a musician, so sometimes you get the odd music video I drop over there. But I do game design streams, just sort of whatever happens, and yeah, so if you're into making your own whatever for D&D 5e or some other TTRPG, come hang out. We just kind of talk about really just the philosophy of game design over there.
Heck yeah. And next up, Trevor, if you could introduce yourself.
How's it going? No fun allowed. Contrary to my name, I sometimes allow fun. I do things such as DM discussions and how to improve yourself, and I cover a lot of the modules, as well as I cover other game systems besides D&D.
Awesome. And all of the links to these lovely individuals, they are posted down below in the likes of the YouTube description, as well as the Twitch chat. Anytime you guys want to see exactly, hey, where can I find that individual? Just hit !guess and you will find it there. That said, everyone. So recently there has been a large influx of dungeon masters or people trying to get into the likes of the D&D, but specifically maybe even taking up the reins of the dungeon master role. Now, with so many individuals trying to join on in, I figured that it would be a great and fantastic time to kind of help them out and try to say, or show and share a bit of our experiences when it comes to being a dungeon master, being a player and all that stuff, and how, or just showing exactly how we kind of try to enhance our game, so then we can maybe in turn enhance their games. So that is the theme, and we're going to start us off with the first question, as we've collected a bunch of questions from the likes of chat, my community, just all over in the D&D sphere. But if you guys ever do find something in the likes of YouTube chat or Twitch chat, by all means just grab it, hold on to it, and then after we get done with the topic, we can easily go in and answer it. But the first one, so this is a question I believe by Nadine. She said, hey, what is the number one issue for a generally new DM? Not that, that pretty much has nothing to do with the players, but just in general as a dungeon master. How, or what would kind of be the number one issue for that, and how would you kind of solve it? So if anybody wants to, or if anybody has an immediate idea that comes to mind, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind, obviously, is just lack of experience, right? And you haven't really found your style or your flow, let's say. This is one reason that I recommend new DMs to run a lot of little one-shots with people they're comfortable with, and just find your rhythm. You know, how much do you need to do this and that? How much do you need to prepare? That's the big thing. And so most DMs, they just lack that self-awareness and that flow, which when you have that flow, like a lot of people are probably going to say like, oh, you got the jitters, you're a little bit afraid, nervous, but the more prepared you are, the less you are those things. So it really just is like, how do you find your flow and your preparedness loop, I guess, that really helps you. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I would say perfectionism. I think a lot of new people show up and try to DM and either want or need everything to be perfect. But ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to suck. Because much like with everything, the first time you do it, you're going to suck. You're going to fall off the bike. You're going to miss the board. You're going to, swing in a strike. When you first DM, you're going to suck. And that's fine. It's good to get those kinks out of the way. What makes a good DM is realizing that you're striking, is realizing that everything's not going to be perfect, and that's fine.
100% agree with that. I remember the first time I DM'd, I TPK'd my party 100% because I didn't realize what challenge rating was, and I thought Ogre was a perfectly fine and challenge for 2 level 1 characters, apart with lair actions. It was a terrible time.
That sounds like a great time. What do you mean?
Tara, take it away.
Yeah, I would say the balance of like system comprehension and probably like information overload. There's quite a few DMs that like we suddenly find this love for something I didn't previously have before, and then it's like we want to learn absolutely everything we possibly can, and this can lead to what's pretty often called like DM burnout. You can get to a point of where you feel apprehensive about like doing the prep work because it's like, oh my god, we're gonna play D&D for 3 hours. I have to like prep this world over here, this town over here in case they go here. I want to be ready for that. There's like, I need 50 NPCs in case they do all this. What if random encounters? Oh god, I'm gonna get to the table. I need like a random encounter table. Yeah, it's like no. Like that's not really what you need to like jump in and start, going with the game. There's some basics to grasp, the action economy, the like. I feel like once you get a general mastery of like what can players do during combat, and I just mean that on a surface level, like what are the basic actions they can do in combat? What are some of the classes capable of doing? Start out small with just what your players are intending on playing first. In general with CR, like the CR system is not perfect, and that can be a little bit shaky. I would say that, like, honestly, there's a great, awesome starting adventure out there. It's in the starter kit. Lost Mines of Phandelver. This is a beautiful starting adventure for any new DM. It lays out everything you need right there in the book. You don't need to reference the monster manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, whatever. It is a quick, easy resource to just plug in, go, and it's actually a pretty great adventure, like, no lie. Yeah, so don't over prep in the sense of like don't burn yourself out thinking that like you see these grand worlds by guys like Mercer or whoever, and think that I have to have 100 cities, I have to have 1,000 NPCs, I have to have a political system, a pantheon of gods, whatever. No, like surface level stuff. Keep it chill. Some people have done all the prep work for you already, so like go play in the Forgotten Realms for a little while. Yeah.
I mean, Tony, you literally took my entire answer of like that being probably the number one thing that I've seen, but I'm going to add on to it. So yeah, just over prepping or sort of feeling as if that, hey, everything has to be kind of fleshed out and like almost perfect before we can actually sit down at the table and roll some dice. I can't tell you, I wouldn't say this, I don't know if this is the number one issue, but it's just, again, just another issue I've sort of seen. But I always sort of hear about like, I'm sort of getting ready for my awesome campaign. I've been, building this up for a while and all this. And I'll ask them, hey, so how long have you been working on it? Yeah, I've been working on it for about 8 months. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you got to play D&D at some point, right? And I think it's something they say in content creation, but I think it also applies to DMing, especially for your first time. It doesn't matter if it's perfect, it kind of just matters if it's done, because in order to get that experience or whatever, you got to actually roll the dice. You actually have to, start DMing at some point. What I would suggest again, Taryn, you kind of took the suggestion of sort of build or using modules and all that sort of stuff. But one thing one little nugget of information that I've seen just since I've been DMing for a long while, I used to be the DM who over-prepped everything, like everything. I'd be the person who's like, oh, we got to have the kingdoms, we have to have the entire pantheon, blah, 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 blah. And eventually I learned, as I DM for the same party, I realized I didn't really need to prep that much. All I needed to prep was the stuff that I couldn't improv. And that's how I kind of, plan my D&D games. I prepare for what I can't just make up on the fly, or that's not really, I don't really need to sort of have a whole bunch of stuff planned out for. And also just intentionally, this is like kind of later on in DMing and all that stuff. Try certain scenarios where you plan like maybe a sentence or two for an encounter, and then just improv the rest, just to really like flex the sort of improv muscles and like really throw yourself into it and get that little bit of experience. Because if you don't try to improv or intentionally try to do it, then you'll probably never get better at it, to be fair. But what's everybody think about all of this? Anybody want to add into or anything?
There are really good resources out there for you to kind of check out how getting into like the DM position. I think the most intimidating thing may honestly be the prep work. Some people love the prep work. I totally get that. There's actually some pretty good guides out there that you can go pick up, like over on the Dungeon Masters Guild, that are like short DM notes. And I would like take a module that you have and then like get one of these like DM compendium things and kind of compare what do they feel is necessary for me to know in order to run the adventure. And then kind of take that note and like, okay, that's what I need behind the screen, right? Like everything else, you can never predict for what your players are going to do. That's kind of the beauty of it. You can't predict what the players are going to do, so you have to at one point just like ride the roller coaster, Yeah.
Anybody want to add anything to that before we go on? It's the only thing comes to my mind.
No, you.
Find me. All right. Maybe try really take note, build some data around how long it takes you to prep and how successful it was, and figure out sometimes like, can I do it in an hour and like the rest is like improvisable beyond that? What did I prepare? If you prepare 2 hours one day and you're like, oh, that wasn't as good of a session, but I did twice the prep work. Well, maybe you just look at what you prepared one time, be a little bit scientific about it. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say is the next time you're a player at a table, while of course still being immersed in your game and putting as much effort as humanly possible, think about the game from the DM's perspective. Think about what they are doing. Think about what the DM is clearly improving and what the DM is clearly planned out. And think about the contrast of what you like and what you don't like. I think something very important is the fact that no two DMs DM the same. What your DM style is going to be is a combination of other DM styles and a growth of your own. So, shop around to see what kind of DM style you prefer and then go with it.
100% agree to that. Actually, that's exactly how I kind of came up with my DMing style. It's like, oh, it's like, you're shopping. You're like, oh, I like that aspect. Oh, I like that aspect. And then you're just kind of making and forming your own DMing style after that. Also, I want to add one other thing. Yes, so I recently was actually like a couple months ago, I've been able to actually like sit down and be a player for once instead of being the forever DM. And just being a player versus a DM, it really does give a lot of perspective. I highly, highly recommend if you're a player, you should DM at some point and vice versa. The reason why is you can sit down, you can be like, oh, so that's how the players typically, or that's kind of how that makes me feel as a player, knowing that the Dungeon Master did this sort of thing, and vice versa. Like, oh, I don't really like how they kind of handled that. I don't really feel good about that. So then when I start DMing, I'm going to make sure not to do that. And also the opposite, like, hey, I really love when they did that. I'm going to start doing that in my games. So definitely recommend that.
Yeah, it's I think some people might think that like the Mercer effect is something to really worry about because like it seems to have been like the buzzword over the last like 5 years. Like I think a lot of people are confusing taking inspiration for mimicry. Like hey, as a jazz musician here, I'm gonna tell you right now, 80% of what I play is licks I lifted from other guitar players. So like I allow those to like kind of inform my own voice, my own like musical style, and I apply it from there, right? It's like that saying goes, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, like yeah, you're going to get inspiration from other DMs. And that's not a terrible thing. You're not some copy paste of Mercer if you like some of the things that Mercer does, or the McElroy brothers, or Brendan Lee Mulligan, right? They've all got great stuff to pull from. Let it inform you and inspire you. That's all good.
100%. Alrighty. So, unless anybody has anything else, we're going to move on to the next question. Wait. Alright. So, the next question that we have here. So, this is one that was a little bit more specific and nitty gritty before we get into the very, very broad questions. This one is this. How do you typically handle internal party conflicts in game and out of game? And we're going to go around the table. You can choose either how to answer which one. So you can either choose how to answer an in-game party conflict or an out-of-game party conflict. So we can start with Jordan, unless anybody has something they really want to say out immediately.
Yeah, I can start.
Go for it.
So in game, I think the question's referring to like the characters have conflict of interests, right?
Yeah.
That's what okay, just checking.
Just internal party conflicts could be like a fight, like it could lead into maybe even a fight breaking out between the party members, like in game, right? Yeah. All that stuff.
I'm all for that, so I don't handle it. I let them do that. Is my short answer. Unless it's because they're confused or they're just taking a lot of time. If it's like analysis paralysis, where they're just trying to make a plan for an hour and they can't decide how to proceed, then I'll intervene. But if it's just like they're just role playing and discussing their moral quandaries and their conflicts of interests, I'm eating that up and refilling my water bottle and letting them talk, If it's out of game, I will stop things and try to stop that, because I will not abide that. It makes it not fun for me. That will burn me out as a DM if I have to deal with that. So I just say, knock it off in a nice way. I did a video about this actually, where I was in the middle of a campaign and in the middle of a session, and it became clear that people were acting out of game conflicts with in-game actions, PvP, and not the fun kind. And so I said, this is the kind of thing that's going to end the campaign if you don't knock it off. And they did not. So I ended up splitting up the group into 2 different campaigns, so that I take very seriously. But if it's just in-game stuff that is role-playing and it's fun, then I wouldn't worry about it.
Makes sense. Anybody else want to jump on into this?
Sure. As far as like, within the game, I'm gonna totally like echo what Jordan said. Like, hey, this is like, part of me thinks that that's like your characters are role playing. I do have the expectation at like session 0. I tell the players like, hey, guys, it's a team game, and like if I want you to build a character. Like, if you're taking the trait, like you're coming up with this trait in your mind of like, no, I'm gonna do what I can to like be as difficult to get along with as possible. Most likely, I'm probably not gonna be playing D&D with that player that long. That tells me about a more of a personality issue than a style of play, rather. And those tend to be people that like are out to power game it in a way, and it's just not really the kind of D&D that like I'm in for. So that can be the kind of thing where like, is the table compatible with that player and vice versa? If answer no, then maybe find a different table/player. Now, as far as like out of game conflicts that go on, I tend to find that people that are asking this question in particular are actually asking a different question, because the obvious answer is talk like adults about an issue that you're having. But I tend to find that people are usually asking this question as a form of like, how do I deal with an issue between my friends without uncomfortable conflict? How can I like subconsciously cause this to get better without directly dealing with it? And that's a whole, like, it's a skill that has to get learned, but like there comes a time where like sometimes you do have to admit, like, yes, you can totally talk these situations out as adults. If something is going to be a constant issue at the tables, then it's, again, like, maybe time, like Jordan said, come up with a different answer than we have to keep this group together to be playing D&D together, right? It's unfortunate when that happens and you have to split some stuff up. Like, I don't like the idea of breaking a D&D table apart. But sometimes, like, it's like I said in the past, like, no D&D is better than bad D&D. And I would think that, like, any kind of bad D&D is like, boy, the party is just having a conflict that is clearly going to be something that won't be resolved here at the table. So we're not beholden by some blood oath to be playing together. It would be nice if all of our friends could get along and everyone's, singing Kumbaya, but it doesn't always happen, So yeah, my number one advice is just, like, you as a DM have a certain level of authority that you have a position that's a little bit easier to smooth this over than a player. So work on that and try to talk like adults. If that's not going to work out, then it's not going to work out. But as far as, like, is there some subconscious way in which you as a DM can, like, relieve this situation, like, I don't know, by introducing this new encounter in there and whatever? That's not a thing. There's no magic answer like that. It's going to have to come with direct talk, person to person.
Well said, well said. Definitely got to agree with you. That would be exactly like kind of how I would handle it. But let's go ahead over to Trevor. What would you think? How would you handle internal party conflicts in or out of game?
Yeah, it's a really complicated one because it is always on a case-by-case basis. There are so many different factors going on in regards of the individuals at play and what kind of game you are playing and what you are willing to do both in and out of game. So the in-game one, that can be as simple as, oh yeah, just let it happen. But there are times where you want to truly play a team-based game and you say, hey, right from the get-go, like, you guys are friends, and you can remove, I guess, that agency of allowing them to have that freedom. But if it's for the sake of expediting a air quote, fun adventure where we're all holding hands and singing Kumbaya, then I think that can be fine. But once again, based on table to table. When it comes to the out of game conflict, that definitely can be the sketchy one because it can be very complicated. Typically, from what I've seen, when there is inter-party conflict at the table, it's usually not because of everything going on at the table. From what I've seen, a lot of times it's outside of the game factors that seep into the game. Like, it could be a rough patch in a relationship. It could be money problems. It could be, insert X, Y, or Z. And sometimes, unfortunately, you have to be a unpaid, what do you call those things? What do you call those things where you go into a shrink?
Therapist?
A therapist? Yeah. Sometimes you got to do that because sometimes your homie is calling out, but they're not calling out in the most healthy way, but you have to read between the lines. And yeah, sometimes, there is an issue and they lash out, and that is their way of getting attention to it. So, once again, purely on a case-by-case basis. There are admittedly a bunch of assholes who will just be assholes for the sake of being assholes. That is what it is, right? But I often find if you're playing with a group of friends, not randos, but friends, then there definitely usually is something between the lines, and you can definitely take them off to the side and say, hey, what's up? What's going on? Can I help you out? Let's not, bring our issues in front of everyone. Let's try and work it out.
Yeah. 100% agree. Yeah, I would pretty much same thing. Just talk it out. If it's not a game issue, just try your best to try to talk about the situation, collaborate and communicate, and try to figure out an answer from that sort of get-go. And I honestly do think that like 95% of all D&D problems can pretty much be solved out of game by just a talk and a conversation. But there are those few that kind of can't at the end of the day. So sometimes it is what it is, but we gotta hope for the best that it doesn't necessarily break the entire party down where it causes either a split or someone having to not be able to play D&D with this group anymore. So ultimately, just talk it out.
I think I should also add to that, don't ignore your instincts, because it's better to catch these things early than when they come to a head. That was my mistake with the example I gave, was I let it go too long. It was apparent that there were people of different play styles, but it's hard once you're knee deep in a campaign to be like, oh, we have different play styles, because you as the DM, you're like, oh, I'll just try to make it work. But there were some little fractures along the way that if I had talked to people and been like, hey, I noticed this, are you feeling a little conflicted? And I did that a little bit, like I could tell because there were different play styles, but sometimes you just gotta talk to someone and be like, hey, did someone do this and it made you feel that way? That's how it seemed to me. Are you know? And sometimes it's completely a misunderstanding even. And you as the DM, you're like, oh, I really don't think he was trying to undermine what you were doing. I think his perspective was just this, and I know him pretty well. I really recommend giving him another chance and just assuming the best of those sorts of decisions on his part. You know, that kind of stuff can really help if you just nip him in the bud. Don't let him fester. Talk to someone one-on-one early and just keep it open-ended. Don't be accusatory. Just be like, it seemed like you may not have enjoyed this. Can I help out in any way? Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah. Actually, I have a question. It's a little more of a personal question from like the past. So this is when I was DMing my third campaign ever. What if in a hypothetical scenario, you know, things just ain't working out, you know? You try talking to them, but it's just, man, they just have differing play styles. They're just button heads. And, you know, maybe an option would be to split the campaign into two, where one group of individuals, they go do their thing, they have that play style, and the other group goes and does their little play style thingy. But you don't have the time, because either IRL stuff, maybe you're in school, maybe you're working a job, whatever it may be, you just don't have time to run multiple campaigns. What would you probably say if that was the case?
Cut the fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to my example, if I had to weigh whether I wanted to do two campaigns, right? Because all of a sudden I have to keep track of two groups and I have to meet twice. I was doing weekly, so I wanted to keep it weekly, so it was twice a week that I was suddenly DMing. If you're not willing to do that, sometimes you just have to say, hey, I'm trying to run the game this way, and I notice this group is kind of jiving more with that, and so I'm going to have to end it for part of the group. And that's really unfortunate, but the alternative is you just say, end the campaign. And so if you say to them, you know, I'm at the point where I'm going to quit that campaign unless I can stick to more of this style, and be specific, be like, Roy and Royetta, whoever they're your peers, are just not kind of keep picking up with that jive that I kind of talked about at session 0 or whatever. So unless you really want another shot and you're willing to give this tone or the style that I'm going for another try, I'll just go do another campaign right now, because I know that I can play with you and have fun in different styles, but just the style of this game and this group isn't really jiving. Just don't beat around the bush. Don't leave it open-ended. Just be like, this is what I'm choosing to do. Talk to me if you think I'm off or that, but this is my decision going forward. Be decisive.
Trevor, you got... Oh, go. Well, I was gonna hear. We'll do it this way. So Trevor had something they want to say, and then we got you, Taryn. Don't worry, I got you.
Well, what I was gonna say is, as a DM, you are not going to appease everybody. It's just not gonna happen. If you are that unicorn DM that can run for literally anybody ever on the planet and run a smooth, awesome campaign, then props to you. I guess you're a miracle worker. But the majority of us aren't. The majority of us have a specific style of play. And what you're going to end up doing over the course of years of DMing is you're going to shop for your players. You're going to eventually pick up people here and there that appeal to that style play, and they're going to enjoy it. But along the way, you're going to get some duds, as it were. You're going to pick up some bad eggs. And that sucks. That happens all the time, especially if you do run for a lot of different people all the time. But what you're going to end up realizing is it's okay to let those people go off and find the DM that's perfect for them. Because you're going to find players that adhere to you. And, you know, the players are eventually going to shop around as well. So, is what it is.
Well said, well said. Go ahead, Taryn.
I mean, I was just gonna say that I was supporting Jordan on that. The session 0, like seriously, and Jordan even said it in chat. Like session 0 can be your syllabus for to point to, 100%. Like it's the agreement that you make whenever you sit down and just say, hey, here's what we're trying to do with this campaign. You can even do the fielding, right? With talking with your players, like, hey, what do you guys want out of the campaign? Yeah, session 0 helps a lot. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. Have your session 0s. Alrighty, so we're gonna move on to the next question that we got here. So this is a little bit more of a broad question. May take a little bit of time to think about. May have it instantly. This is yes. So what are some of the most important life lessons? We'll chop it up to one so we have enough time for everybody to go. But what is the number one life lesson that you've learned from your experiences as a DM? This can be, I mean, I guess this could be something you apply to your everyday life, or it could be something that you apply to your DMing style from here on out. What was that number one life lesson?
My number one lesson is that humans suck. And I'm not talking about the human race in D&D that gives you the feat. No, because humans are awesome because they give you the feat. I'm talking about human beings that you sit down and play with. Because, as I just mentioned, you are going to shop around for players, or maybe you bring your friends to the table. And I think that it's basically worse when you bring your friends to the table, because you might hang out with this person, you might play sports with them, you might go to school with them, whatever. And then you sit down and play a game with them and realize that, whoa, they've got a whole different personality. What's going on? They flip 180s, and then you invite other people to the table, and you think that they're going to be cool because they talk all this big game about playing D&D all the time, and then they sit down and try and be, you know, crazy and wacky and do all sorts of not fun things. And you know, like I just mentioned, you are going to shop around for people, and for depending on your style of play and depending on your preferences for interacting with other human beings, it may take a lot of shopping around, but unfortunately, you are going to meet some people that are not too savory, as it were.
100%. We had two people where everybody was trying to jump in. Let's go with Taryn, and then we're gonna go over to Jordan.
Never forget that this is a game. The moment that you stop treating it like a game, it becomes a job. It becomes pretty unfun. And I think that as someone that gets hundreds of YouTube comments every day, I see a lot of people that seem to be forgetting that Dungeons and Dragons is a game. People that have a disagreement about, like, an opinion about something in this game, boy, it is sure not the same as disagreements about things like policy or ethics and morals, right? Like, but man, some people definitely seem to treat it as such. This is a game, and if something breaks down in the game, I know a lot of us have anxiety and perfectionism about, we want story continuity to be 100%, you know, whatever. It's a game. Some things may fall apart. In fact, I will give you a promise right now. Things will fall apart. But you can learn from each of these failures. That's like one of my favorite sayings that I tell all my students. The road to success is paved with the car wrecks of failures. Every single time that you screw up, don't take it as a like, oh, my story sucks now or whatever. Take it as a like, you know what, we learned from it, how can we adapt and move forward? Or whatever, right? At the end of the day, it's like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if you guys play a session of D&D that doesn't make sense? You know what I mean? Like, I think we have this, like, imagined worst case scenario, this imagined apocalypse of, like, if I'm not a perfect DM, then I failed Matt Mercer, like whatever. It's fun. Just have fun with it. Yeah. Don't ever forget that childlike wonder.
Definitely. All right. So that being said, let's go over towards Jordan.
Yeah, and Titania in the chat, I see you, and I your question about what's like the perfect player, I can feed into my answer here as well. I value players who make others look good. So if you are a player and you're trying to make the DM's ideas look good, you're engaging with it and you're engaging with what other players are doing, and you yes and them and you build on whatever they're doing, you are a player I will cling to. I will want you in every game. Please never go away. If you're ever upset, let me know why. If I need to send you cupcakes in the mail to keep you coming, that is you exude fun. You any DM burnout I'm experiencing goes away. All of it. Like, that is a great life lesson. Just like make others look good. They want to be with you and be your friend, and they'll support you when you need to move. They'll show up to move boxes. Whatever it is, it's one of the best traits to have in a human being. And as a player, I just want that so bad. And when I try to be a player, that's what I try to do to make myself a better player, is make others look good, everyone else.
That's actually part of the reason why I love writing support classes so much.
Yeah.
Is like I think out of the 5 or 6 classes I've written, about 5 are supports, like hardcore support. And I love that kind of playstyle because I feel like it's always building into the team first and foremost. But yeah, I love that kind of character, that kind of player, But yeah.
Yeah. I think for mine, it's pretty simple. I've said it before, but it was more so, this actually was someone said before, just realizing that it's a game. We're here to have fun. We come to play D&D, to sit down every week to have a fun time and enjoy ourselves and make memories that we're going to remember for years and years and years. It's no point of trying to kind of not focus on that at the end of the day whenever you're making a lot of these decisions that you're doing. So whenever there's an option personally for me that I can either choose hey, the players, is this the more lore accurate reason, or that XYZ should happen, or is this the more fun reason? Which one am I going to choose, A or B? I'm going to choose the more fun reason. Who cares if it's super, super lore accurate, unless, the players really enjoy that sort of thing. But overall, just choosing which one is the more fun thing that's going to be creating those memories, that's going to keep everyone coming back or next week. That's something that I kind of eventually had to learn and stop from trying to focus super, super heavily on the rules, and that's when I started becoming more of a rule of cool DM and stop prepping as much as I used to, and just go with the flow and just roll with the punches and have a great time, because that's all you got to do. To be honest, that's their main sort of goal. Have fun. So, real quick, we're gonna go to the next question, unless anybody had anything else you guys want to go into with that. All right. We can grab, we got a quick question on chat, just everybody going around the table. What's your max party size that you would kind of DM for, IRL and online? Just throw out a quick number. I would start with Jordan.
The biggest group I've had, in a session, was 8 players, and the smallest I've had was 1. And I think you can have fun with all of them. But if you're just getting started as a DM, do a group of 3 to 4 players.
Yeah. Definitely understand that. We're gonna go over to Trevor. Just what do you probably your preferred party size or max you'd ever DM for?
So that's entirely dependent on the system. Because of how air quote clunky or chunky 5e is, I would say 5. But if I was running some OSR system, then I could easily go up to 8 or 9.
Easy enough. Easy enough. Go ahead, Taryn.
6 is my max. I've DM'd at conventions and stuff, and that's fine for one shots or whatever. I feel that combat tends to slow down, and some of the inner workings of the game start to break apart with larger party compositions. I prefer 6 is my max, and also I just need a bigger table to play at. So yeah, I can seat 6 pretty comfortably at my table. As of right now, I'm running a game for 4 that fluctuates, where one player is I guess you could say like West marches in and outing.
Yeah.
Kind of whenever he can show up, it's great to have him. But no, for the most part, I like the close, more like intimate 3 to 4. Just personally, I think that everyone feels like, okay, I have a sense of urgency. There's I'm not waiting a full 10 minutes until my turn comes back up. Yeah, I mean, I think the snappier combat, like it's just something I really love. Where it feels like a player is, I'm thinking about talking to them every at least like 3-4 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So for me, my max I've ever DM'd for, but this is just like only for one shot, was like a whole thing with Project Aurora, was 15 players at once. It was like a raid boss sort of deal. Would I ever do that consistently? Hell no. The maximum amount of party members that I ever kind of do is like for a campaign, right, or one shot would be 6. That is the absolute maximum. In an ideal and perfect world, I would actually probably DM for 4. But the reason why I can't ever DM for 4 is because kind of like exactly what you said, Taryn. There may be that one person where, they jump in and out because, IRL gets in the way. It just happens. It's a normal thing with D&D. So whenever you lose that 4th player and now you're down to 3, that's when combat balance and a whole bunch of other things can get really, really muddy. So that's why I typically prefer 4-5. So hey, if one person leaves, we still got a 4-person party. We're good to go. And it still allows for everybody to get their moments to shine, either through RP, through combat, or whatever. Everybody's still having an equal chance of being able to play the game. All right. Alrighty. So going past that, the next question that we have, we're gonna go with this one. So, just a very, very simple one. So how would you kind of plan for groups that frequently go off the rails? This is kind of going into like improper prep, or just how do you in general as a DM, like just with your style, how do you kind of deal with groups that go off the rails pretty frequently?
Me personally, I would talk to them in earnest and say, hey, do you want a game where there is no rails? Do you want a game where you just go wherever, do whatever? In which case it is a, improv theater game, and that's perfectly fine. Because I see often a lot of times DMs try to run a, let's say like a 5e adventure module, and then the players, are in Icewind Dale, and then they say, oh, let's go, let's not be in Icewind Dale kind of thing. It's one of those things where you do have to earnestly talk to the players and say, hey, what is the game that you want so I can provide that game for you, versus me providing you a game and then you rubbing against it.
Definitely agree with that. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, it kind of defends what we mean by off the rails, right? Because I think that could be a good thing where players are not just letting the DM tell them where to go and they don't really make decisions, which especially in modules can happen. They're just kind of like, okay, what happens next? Because we know the module says something. Where do we need to go? And so getting off the rails shows engagement, right? So that's good. But I echo what Trevor said. Like if you're playing an Icewind Dale and they're like, let's teleport to Baldur's Gate, it's like, if I might even just, I'm someone who embraces a lot of out of game discussion. You can call it metagaming even, and saying to the players like, hey, this is completely outside the range of the campaign I had prepared. I'm willing to do a quick thing, but then let's get back to it. Just FYI, and maybe I misunderstood what they're trying to do. Maybe they're like, oh, we really just wanted to do this real quick and thought it'd be fun. And like, okay, cool. So embrace those. Like if they're making you uncomfortable with how much they go off the rails, then just say, hey, just so you know, like I'm pretty much gonna have to make up everything with the way you're going. If that's fun for you, I'm willing to do it. Or if that's fun for you, it's not fun for me. And so just FYI, let's get back on the just be know your limits, know what you want, and be decisive and communicative very quickly.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think there's I think that there's kind of a difference between going off the rails and derailing. Like, I think that derailing implies a little bit more like maliciousness than like something going off the rails, right? things go off the rails all the time in my campaigns. Like, I mean, and that's again, I'm not going to be able to predict everything that the players are going to be doing, and I don't really try to anymore. So I just kind of make it to where it's like they have my world, and more or less I'm going to make something up along the way that's going to, rather than thinking about it like a railroad, I like to think of it like a highway. At some point, they might take an off turn that whatever, cool, then we come up with that along the way, right? Derailing to me seems to imply the malicious intent to sabotage, which that is a personality issue. Anybody who's like, if you're trying to ride your bike and someone keeps sticking a stick in your tire, and then you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna find somewhere away from you to go ride my bike, or you, yeah. So derailing is, personality issues are a lot harder to deal with than game narrative. So it's easy to address something going off the rails. Well, I guess it's easier to address a derailer. You don't play with that person anymore, right? I think if someone's doing something malicious in order to make your job harder and make the game less enjoyable for you or other people, that's not the kind of person that you should be playing D&D with. But yeah, stuff going off the rails, there's all kinds of tools out there that you can grab completely free if you choose to, find some of the primo. Like, I've got quest decks. People make random tables that you can just roll up and see what happens that are all available online. You can make your own. A Word document is an infinite possibility. So depending on what you want to do, if your players are really liking that, like, we go off the rails kind of a play, then maybe find some things like random encounters that could happen. There's also the cheat of, like, I prepped the dungeon that they're supposed to be in. And if they're like, no, we want to go explore the world. Okay, cool. Well, wherever they go, you can just copy paste that dungeon. You only need one or two. So, little DM sleight of hand tricks you can do with that.
Yeah. So for me, when it comes to, again, echoing what everybody said when it came to players going off the rails and all that stuff, embrace it. I love it, because you never know what type of story will come out of it later down the line. It may take next week. It may take a couple of months down the line. I was playing Rime of the Frost Maiden, and now my players are going into hell. That's not in the module, but hey, we're not on the module anymore. We're rolling with the punches. We're just going with it, because that's ultimately kind of where the quote-unquote narrative kind of took it. That's what the players sort of decided after a bunch of events, and they're loving it. They're enjoying themselves. So don't necessarily think that, hey, because they're going off the rails or they're doing the stuff that you didn't necessarily plan for, that, oh no, that's a bad thing. It's probably going to be a good thing. Just sit back, see what happens, and go from there. If I can provide, I don't really want to say advice, but one thing that I have done or I've learned or picked up, don't be afraid. A lot of Dungeon Masters are, they're sometimes too scared to do this, or especially if they don't have a lot of experience with it. But if you feel like you're improvising way too much and you're going way off the deep end, don't be afraid to just be like, hey guys, all right, I'm gonna need to prep a lot more for this. We're gonna call this session early and we're gonna pick it up next week. Don't be afraid to necessarily do that if you can continue improv and go from there. Because sometimes you might need to just prepare that next dungeon that you didn't know that they were going to go into, but they are going into it now, and you just need a little bit of time.
And when you do that, when they kind of have a choice where it's like, oh, we wanted to keep playing for 2 more hours, but the DM says they're going to cut it early. If the DM saying, yes, we can do this, but I'll need to prepare, they might say, oh, no, let's not do that. We'd rather keep playing. And they might realize they weren't that married to the choice in the first place. And so sometimes just communicating that, like, even with people are going off the rails, if you said, hey, we're like, if it seems like being a little self-analytical here as a player, I can totally be the person who's an instigator if I'm frustrated that nothing's happening. And I have frustrated DMs before who thought I was just trying to derail things, but I was just trying to be decisive because I was sick of sitting around for 2 hours talking and running and talking in circles. And so sometimes it's okay to say to a player like, hey, are you making this choice because you're frustrated and you want something to happen? And if so, like, let's not make that choice. I'll just help make something happen. Or is it like you genuinely want to do this? Like, feel free to ask that kind of questions to people like me who can be an instigator and just want to make things happen sometimes, you know, for better or worse.
Well said, well said. Anybody got anything else they want to add to it? All right. We're going to move on to the next question. And thus, I got a couple more questions, but just in case anybody got any questions, either Flutes, Trevor, Taryn, any of you questions that you guys just have that you want to ask anybody?
What style kind of games are you running? If you could like summarize it as like, I do sandbox, I do, you're running like probably the most expansive kind of a TTRPG world I've heard of, doing the MMO style thing. But like, what, like, are you guys, if you can summarize it, is it like, yeah, we go beat to beat to beat? Is it Mega Dungeon? Is it like West Marches? Like, what's the sandbox? Whatever.
I find that even if I'm running a module, even modules, I tend to be more sandboxy, which is one reason I gravitate towards Curse of Strahd, because it's kind of written sandboxy. And I'm enjoying Tomb of Annihilation now as a player, which my dad is the DM, and it's been pretty sandboxy of like, where do we want to go? I've never been happier as a DM than when I was running more West Marches style, where players could kind of switch out what characters they were week to week and what level they are and what kind of event, you know, be more episodic. I've always really enjoyed that style, which is more old school D&D, where it wasn't like very plot driven. It was more, you know, let's go in and accomplish this task and try not to die, and kind of developing the world as you go doing that. So I've always been very happy, even if I'm running a campaign with a plot, sandbox style, where if they want to stop and revive some ghost town they came across and make it their own. I've never been happier than those kinds of things. I never thought I would get into modules much because I thought they were too structured, but I realized you can be pretty sandboxy within them, and that's my style.
To kind of go on to that, so two sort of answers. So mainly it depends on the campaign and what I really want to run. That'll dictate what type of style I'll, run for it. Right now, for my current campaign, it's definitely more of a sandboxy sort of feel. But late game, and I explained this in session 0, as more and more plot threads get unraveled and like the mysteries, become clear, it will become a little bit more of a plot-driven campaign. But you'll find out it's more of like, hey, you'll kind of figure out which sort of plot point you guys want to hook onto and focus for the rest of it, if that makes sort of sense. In the past, I've ran both. Of character-driven campaigns where it's just that super open world, like, yeah, I'll meet in the tavern, you just go out doing some crazy, wacky adventures and all that stuff, right? Just go wherever you wish. And I've done the campaigns where it's just heavily plot-driven, like, this is the point why you made your characters, this is what you guys are kind of doing. However you do it, doesn't matter to me, but this is ultimately what your goal, right? I think a lot of the times players, they're typically scared of the word railroad or railroaded campaign, and I don't think that's what a plot-driven campaign is. I think a lot of the time players, what they really want is they want to be able, a lot of the time from what I've seen, they want a little bit of guidance, just a little bit, not all the time, and they just want it to be where if they say, hey, that's a cool mountain, I want to go to it, the DM is perfectly fine with that. That's typically the type of campaign, from what I've seen, a lot of players kind of want to run. And that's roughly kind of how I do it in general. There's banes and benefits of both, but if I had a preference, if I'm running only a few amount of campaigns, definitely sandbox. If I'm running like 4 or 5 different campaigns, plot driven. It'll keep yourself sane, for sure.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I am completely all over the place. Right now, as of this current second, I'm running a bunch of one-shots, and they are movie theater experiences where I run it for 2 hours because I ain't running no dang 4-hour one-shot. But, they go to a place, things happen to them, they're getting into combat, bada bing, bada boom, it's done. And then I'm also running a bunch of other games where it is more of a sandbox, and it is more, and I'm running other games where it is more narrative focused. And I have also ran West Marches games where I have 30 players that can show up at any given point. Of course, like maximum of like 6 can show up at any one session, but you know, and so I've ran like a large gambit, and I want to continue to do more of that, because having a healthy variety is great for me, because much like how I talked about earlier, shopping for players, I'm able to shop for players and say, hey, like, I'm going to run this kind of game, like, I'll show up if you want to play in that kind of game. And that's great, because not everyone wants to worry about the melodrama of their character and their events. They just want to go, you know, fight 2d6 orcs in the next room. And then some other players don't want to fight 2d6 orcs in the next room. They want the melodrama and the political intrigue. And so I'm able to provide for more people that way. And also the West March is a really great way to get a whole bunch of people into a game and make it feel like a living world, and also be able to run a game whenever the frick I want to. You know, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, if I can jump in there, when I first started, and I always tell new DMs, like, run a lot of one shots with people you're comfortable with. I was doing the West Marches style, where literally any 10 of us could be the DM and just be like, hey, I have an idea for an adventure. If you have a 5th level character that's like leveled up that much in like the games we've been playing, let's do it this Saturday. Who's available? Instead of, let's try to meet weekly with the same group all the time, same characters, you know, and if someone can't make it, we're going to cancel. It was just very free form. Sometimes it'd be a group of 6 players, sometimes 2. And the variety was a great way to get acclimated as a DM and have that spice of life variety like Trevor's just kind of alluding to. So West Marches, like, really, people should try them more. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually,
so harkening back to the whole player being good thing, I'm being a good YouTuber by making the rest of you all look better with my incredibly terrible setup and frame rate.
Oh man.
So you should keep me around so I make you all look really good.
It gives you even more personality. Come on.
My frame rate of 1 frame every 60 seconds.
Yeah, Trevor experiences life one moment every 5 seconds at a time.
I mean, the human eye can only see 5 frames a second anyway. So
true. This isn't a glitch on your screen, folk. This is actually reality, you know. Oh man. So we got about 2 more questions coming up. So these are the heavy hitters. It's kind of what we answered a little bit from before, but this is a little bit more of a recent sort of thing. So this question, it is, what is your current biggest challenge as a DM, and how are you overcoming it right now? Yeah.
Scheduling.
All right, we got a positive question after this one, but but this is just, what is your current biggest challenge as a DM, and how do you overcome it, or trying to overcome it?
It is always scheduling. I have a session that I have a current campaign going on right now that everyone's supposed to be meeting up every Sunday, whenever we can, right? No matter what, we've run into issues, and that's fine. It's okay. But yeah, universally, my issue is always coming down to scheduling. But if there was something that I would like to personally improve as a DM, like a skill that I would like to improve, then I would most likely say it's something I'm kind of challenging myself with this current campaign. Being more comfortable with I think like romance as a theme at a table is a newer thing that I've been trying to whatever. It's a little bit easier because like my girlfriend plays at the table and whatever, but it's still kind of a thing that I'm like trying to figure out, is this going to be the thing for me or not, or whatever. So yeah, other than that, I mean, just the same old same old, like always improving, always figuring out what new resource I've got that can possibly enhance my games or whatever. So yeah.
Makes sense. Anybody want to go next, or if not, I can take it.
For me, it's growing pains with. When I started out, I had a lot of friends. We were in college. There was a lot of people around. Spare time if you weren't doing homework. Now it's like people live all over the place, and it's tough. Not so much. I find scheduling has been okay for me, but it's usually me dividing my time with my family. It's like work-life balance, let's call it. But then I play a lot more online now, so it's learning like how can we make that better. And my main struggle is that no one wants to turn their cameras on because their cameras aren't good enough, or they don't want their cameras on. And man, do I struggle with cameras off. And so that's when next time I DM, I'm gonna say, please let's make this a cameras on campaign if we're playing online. That's my big thing lately.
We can go over to Trevor if you got something.
Yeah, my biggest problem as a DM is caring. And while I say that obviously as a joke, there's also a truth to that in regards of I can care about the player, I can care about the character, but I do not care about your character sheet. Ultimately, I find with a lot of new people showing up, or even veterans showing up, just new people showing up to my table anyway, so many people care about their character sheets more than they care about their character, more than they care about other people's characters, and more than they care about the campaign. And unfortunately, there's like that friction of I don't care about your character sheet, I care about the other things, and then you only care about your character sheet, and you only care about the other things, and I just don't care, and I can't open up my heart to caring about your multi-classed, epic plus 17, rolls, and your min-maxed. Oh, I've got this spell which enhances this ability. I don't care. And I care more about what the character provides for a narrative. I care more about how you interact with other players at the table. I care more about enjoying an adventure at hand. And what I ultimately find is the character sheet doesn't, add anything to that. But some people I find care more about that. So it's tough.
What would you say that you're doing to kind of like overcome that sort of challenge right now?
Oh, I've closed my heart off to that. I don't care. It sucks, because ultimately that is what's going on. Is I get people showing up and they care so much about their character sheet, and I realize obviously if you don't put in as much care, attention to detail, and effort as caring about the other players and care about the adventure, then you care about your character sheet, then it's not going to work out on my table. Like once again, I don't care about your multi-class of 2 this and 5 that gives you this ability and this feature. I care more about you showing up to the table to have a good time with everyone else and enjoy the adventure that's laid out.
Yeah, and I love exactly what you said, Flutes, over in chat. Caring about the mechanics too much and then treating it kind of like as a war game rather than an RPG, a role-playing game, that sort of whole thing.
Yeah, ultimately, that is another problem too, is there are games that are fantastic for what these people want, but because 5e is just the big grab all, oh, hey, if you're playing a tabletop role-playing game, you have to play D&D. People gravitate to that when they would be having a much better time playing a different game. But, 5e is king right now, so it is what it is.
So, for me, my biggest challenge right now is kind of what you were saying, Jordan. It's, being efficient with my time. Question: how many games does everybody kind of run right now? We can start with
this
Jordan.
Past week. I've ran 5 sessions.
Yeah. Because yours is, make sure I got this right. Yours is more like a pickup sort of thing. It's like, hey, I feel like running D&D at this time. All that stuff we can make it kind of deal, right? For this one shot.
Yeah, for the one shots, but typically when I'm running air quo regular campaigns, I can easily fit 2 or 3 a week.
Gotcha. And then go ahead, Jordan.
I am not DMing at the moment. I'm just playing.
Oh, living the life. Taryn, what about you?
It kind of depends. I'm not really running. I'm running the one campaign that I have in person for buddies and all that stuff. But I kind of oversee and get feedback on playtest stuff, and that's a different kind of purpose. Just in design work, that's I don't know that I consider that regular play. That's its own monster. So I mean, the one that I'm running for my buddies and stuff, the one.
It makes sense.
I just, in the middle of everything else I'm doing, it's just, I like having the one with my buddies where I'm like, I feel like we're I don't know, we're playing D&D, the way that we came to love the game, you know.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
it
you'll
makes
actually
sense.
come to find, Sensei, is that a lot of D&D YouTubers don't actually play D&D. It's kind of hilarious.
That is, oh my god, actually that is actually pretty funny. The more I think about it, yeah, I think I asked this question before, and a lot of them just don't.
Yep.
But the reason
I admit
go.
I do kind of categorize in my head subconsciously, or I'm kind of like, I don't hear them talking about their games very much. I don't think they're really playing it very much. You know? I do keep track of that a little bit in my head.
Oh man,
Yeah, I
you guys
haven't
are
like
phonies, all of you. I'm messing with you.
Yep.
Messing with you.
there was I'm trying to remember if it wasn't Dale Kingsmill. Who was it? There was who was doing like one of the original like campaign diary YouTube channels. Is there anybody that I'm trying to remember?
That's what I was
Who?
thinking, Puff and Force, but I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, I think that was right.
He doesn't play D&D anymore either.
Oh man, but I guess to go back to my thing. So basically, like a lot of the time, I run 4 campaigns, and then I also plan another campaign, and then I got school and all this other stuff. So life is hectic, but I love D&D. Gotta be planning all that stuff. So a big thing or challenge for me is managing time to actually prep the game and then actually play the game, and get or fit sleep somewhere in that little equation, right? So the way I'm sort of trying to overcome this sort of thing is just, I know you mentioned, Taryn, like, hey, the more you sort of treat it like a job, the worse it becomes. But I think to an extent, sometimes especially someone with ADHD, sometimes forming a list or a schedule for things does help out tremendously. So I can actually get stuff done rather than just everything is just floating around in the head and hoping to get done eventually, right? So forming just a simple schedule is like, hey, getting used to it where like at this certain time, this certain part of the day, this is my little prep day, my prep time. I'm gonna nail all these sort of things and get all that sort of stuff done. Just setting those little time pieces aside is definitely helpful for sure. But yeah, so I mean, I guess if anybody else in chat has some things for like, hey, how do you kind of manage multiple campaigns and keep your entire world sane, by all means, drop it down below in chat, and we'll be definitely reading it at some point.
Take good notes for sure. And I will say, like, jokes aside, like, even if a YouTuber isn't playing D&D currently, like, it ebbs and flows. Like, people have time. So I don't want to seem like I'm slamming people. It was just kind of like tongue-in-cheek funny. Like, some people play weekly, some people play 5 times a week, sometimes people play once a month, sometimes people play. They're hoping to next year, like so.
Not slam them. If they're not running 5 games a week, they're not a real D&D YouTuber.
Oh, get out of here with that. I already have to deal with enough crap from like. So as a content creator, it's like I'm busy with real life work and I'm busy with like whatever else I'm doing. And one of the things that I get, I'm just gonna say, is a lot of pushback on is like this sensation that like there's D&D elitism going on.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, it might be in jest, but like I'm just saying, like, some people don't take it in jest. So,
yeah.
Just saying. But we can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to point it out, because I don't want to seem like I'm gatekeeping based on how frequently people play.
Nah, you're good.
Unless you run 10 games a week, you're not a real D&D YouTuber.
He's gonna keep doubling the number, Trevor.
Absolutely.
That's Trevor. Let me tell you, like I've talked to some people, like Twitch streamers and all that stuff. They're the ones who run the frick ton of games and all that stuff. I remember a great friend of mine, Dead Aussie Gamer. It's like, yeah, I run like 10 games a week. I'm like, how do you sleep? How do you
live?
Yeah, like what? And then like say this casually. I love Dead Aussie Gamer, by the way, a fucking fantastic individual. But it's very common for people to just run multiple games a week and just be like, yeah, this is normal. We're all good. We're sane. We're living the life.
If you run 10 games a week, you're not a real D&D YouTuber because you run too many games.
Oh man, but. Jokes aside, so that is current biggest challenges as DMs and how we're overcoming it. But let's go into this one, our final question before we wrap everything up. So, what about DMing do you get the most joy from? What is your favorite part about being a dungeon master? What would it be? I can probably step in and just speak on the meantime. I think I got one. I think it's kind of what I've harped about all the time, and I believe that it really just comes down to two things, mainly being able to take those ideas, those concepts that players kind of have, and being able to help them collaboratively kind of turn that into a reality. Like if a player comes over to me and they're like, hey man, here's my cool character concept, and I view it as like, oh wait, that's just, you want to play Spider-Man. And like, yeah, I want to play Spider-Man. Giving them that experience at the end of the day where they're freaking somehow slinging across the sky and across buildings and all that stuff and just having a great time, and really bringing out, like, allowing or helping individuals really get that experience that they're really looking for, that they kind of can't with other, like, a video game or watching a movie or whatever it may be. I love that sort of stuff. Being able to, help people have fun and just really create an awesome sort of story at the end of the day that you're going to be remembering for years and years and years upon end. That'd probably be my favorite thing as a DM.
For me,
my favorite. Oh, go on. No, you.
We're gonna go with Taryn.
I just love the open-endedness of it all, where no matter what it is, you can basically make it happen in this game. And in terms of like, some people are like, yeah, I really want the Skyrim-y experience, or whatever. They have like, as someone that's been such a huge like fantasy reader in my life, it's like, no, cool, we get to come up with something completely that's our own. And someone might have an idea for a character that like they never got to really read or see in fantasy, and this game helps them to actualize that. And it's another reason why I focus a lot on like making so many character options, is it's like, I like giving people the ability to see what they can make happen, in this game. It's also just like, I mean, D&D is the way that I met, my girlfriend Amanda. It's been a common connecting thread for like me and all my buddies, like here in Tulsa. It's been the most fun I've been able to have, just with like, not needing, oh, this guy needs a PlayStation or else he can't really game with us or whatever, right? It's the most kind of unique experience I've had in like gaming ever. And it's just like, I mean, it's a game of literally infinite possibilities. And as somebody who like, I love open world sandbox games, like this is my bag right here, So, yeah.
Awesome. Let's go over to Trevor and then Jordan.
My favorite part of DMing is presenting a challenge to my players and not knowing how it's going to be overcome. I love telling my players, hey, there's a river. How do you get across it? And not knowing the answer, because ultimately as a DM, you typically know a lot of answers ahead of time. You put down a monster and your players need to put it down to 0. But how do they put it down to 0? Do they use some sort of magic? Do they drop the chandelier on its head? Do they lure it into a trap? Do they try and seduce it? Whatever the case may be. Ultimately, I love not knowing, because as a player, the whole point of the game is to not know, because you're adventuring into the unknown. And as a DM, I want that same level of not knowing. So I try as much as possible to present problems when I don't have a clear solution. So that way my players are the ones that come up with the solution, and it truly is a rewarding experience for both of us.
Well said. Bring us home, Jordan.
Yeah. So I've kind of gone back and forth on this over the years. Like, why is it fun to DM? But relating it to improv scenes. So if I'm in an improv show or I'm at improv practice, it can be okay to like goof around and get some laughs, do some dad jokes in the middle of a scene or whatever, make some big choices, have fun. But it ultimately feels empty and unfulfilling if there aren't moments of like true building a story together in a scene, where people are really like understanding like, okay, where are we going to go with this? And let's yes and each other and like actually build something that is impressive. In D&D, it's the same kind of thing, where if it is a war game, it's boring. If it's just role playing, running a shop, it's boring. Like, to me, the real balance as a DM that I enjoy is a real collaborative back and forth where players latch on to certain things and they build on it, and they build their characters, or they latch on to things. So like that collaboration is a spark, and it has to do with creativity. It has to do with friendship and all that stuff, you know, power of friendship, whatever. But that's the spark that makes things interesting to me and keeps me coming back. Video games can't do that with me. I can't collaborate with a video game. Yeah, so I like that D&D has that aspect to it, and as a DM, that's what I crave, as players interacting in a meaningful way with what I put forth, and that's the spark of fun and creativity that keeps me coming back.
I actually want to add on to that. Both you and what Taryn was saying, pretty much actually all of you, just the satisfaction of being able to create something together. Right, let me tell you, like, there is almost no greater and a little bit worse feeling than sitting back after a badass campaign and just being like, damn, we did that. We created that. That was an epic story that we, you know, made together. And just being able to sit back and just reminisce like all the sort of things that you kind of did leading up to this moment, and looking back at the story that unfolded because of you guys, it's awesome. It really is awesome. It is sad that obviously it's over, but it's just a feeling that I love, and that's kind of why that's why I love running little big campaigns, because it feels fulfilling, it feels satisfying at the very end. So definitely want to add that in. All right, so that being said, anybody have any other sort of things they want to add onto it before we close out everything? All right. Oh,
I kind of just put a bit about it in chat, but like Taryn brought up a good point of like this elitism that can creep in, and so like sometimes even when I'm just joking, I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't make people think they have to play a certain frequency to be relevant or have their opinion understood. Similarly, I hope no one, if you're DMing or you think about being a DM, feels pressured that you have to do things a certain way, or you're not doing D&D right, or you're not doing your whatever TTRPG you're playing right. Like, do what works for you. If you can only commit to once a month, don't feel like you're failing or anything. You know, it is what it is for everybody, and yeah, don't let hopefully. Nothing I say or do, or I don't have a chance to clarify, makes anyone feel that way. Like I feel that burden that I don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to play a certain way.
Nah.
Yeah, I think there's also like an intimidation factor that comes in whenever some people see like the way that some TTRPG like influencers or whatever like run their kind of things, or like, you know, I did that video like my DM kit. And it's like nothing that was in there is required for anybody to run this game. It's just stuff that like I found over the years that I'm like, I really dig this. But like, I think some people can see something like maybe Dimension 20 or, I mean, Critical Role with like their big set and everything. You know, I mean, this is something that even got Critical Role flack where, well, unjust.
If you don't have $1 million set, you're not playing D&D.
Yeah, and it's like, no, that's not what you need, you know. Anyways, so like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I try to always preface it with like the homebrew I allow at my table kind of thing. It's like, you guys don't have to accept my advice or recommendations or anything like that. It's just what, you know, some people ask me, hey, what are you doing at your table? So yeah, influencers should don't take the advice of influencers if they're telling you you are doing it wrong if you're not doing this thing the way I say. That's bad advice. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that ultimately comes down to like what we discussed before is you as a DM or as a player, you know, whatever it is, you are going to shop around and grab little bits and pieces from some people and then develop your own style. And ultimately, I would strongly suggest you never steal or take from exactly just one person because they're wrong. You're right. Everyone else is wrong except for you. You who listens to this, you're right. You're awesome. Do whatever the frick you need to do to make that game awesome. If it is running a game once a month where you have tiny little paper cutouts because you're poor, you know, like me, that's awesome. You know, I think those games are way better than, you know, having $1 million setup and, you know, 18 cameras pointing at your face. But that's just my personal opinion.
I don't know the reason why. The reason why is because it's your game. It's your game. So, I mean, honestly, like that'd be what it is. Like, just really trying to figure out what works best for your style, or what works best for your game table. That's what makes a quote unquote, I hate using this, but a good DM. A person who can figure out a way how to make their game table the best, how they can make or take everything that all the other players want, how they can take it like, okay, this is how you're gonna or this is what you want to do to kind of have fun. All right, awesome, let's collaborate, let's talk about it, let's make it happen, let's do this thing, right? Let's have a great, awesome time. That's what it is. That's what it is. So, that being said, any other sort of things anybody want to add to that?
Unless there's anything from chat.
Anything from
All right,
chat?
we got 10 minutes to do an improv D&D session. Let's go.
All right, you guys wake up in a tavern. I'm the DM. What's up? All right, so Jordan, you are an elf. Trevor, you're an orc, and Taryn, you are a dwarf. All right, you guys look over and you see as a massive sort of plague doctor individuals at the likes of the behind the what's it called? I can't think of it. Behind the bar. There we go. What do you guys say or do? They're kind of just staring at you right now.
I run out the tavern.
Ew, and walk away.
All right. Well,
This man keep drinking. Yeah.
all right. You see an explosion outside. It forces you back in the tavern. Now I'm fucking with you. Oh,
Now that's a railroad campaign right there.
yeah, exactly. Oh man.
No, you gotta stay in the tavern, guys. You have
No,
to.
it gets even worse. It's like, so an explosion forms outside the tavern, and then as you do this, you see this, and you walk up to the keeper, the individual, and you say, "Oh my god, rough."
So whenever, for the people that are writing adventure modules, and I'm sure you've seen it if you've ran any of the 5e modules, there's a whole bunch of text blurbs that you tell your party. And typically those describe what your players see. However, every once in a while, they describe how your players feel. Like some of them say, as your eyes draw upon the castle, you stand in awe. How do you all feel about that? Do you think that is do you think that's unwholesome? How do you feel about that?
I just treat it as a prompt, so I'm okay with it. I know I'm a big boy. I know that just because the book says it doesn't mean my character has to feel that way, but it's a prompt that it's a moment that could inspire awe, and I take it or leave it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, that's the reason why they keep, I mean, sure they have the modules, but it's the reason why they keep titling their books things like Dungeon Master's Guide or Player Handbook, not like rule, you know, like this is how you must play it, right? So these are guides rather than hard, set, fast, whatever. And now in terms of a module, whenever it's telling you like, yeah, I mostly just see like, what's the room description? If it's like relevant to a puzzle or something that they need to, you know, I make sure they give them that information. But for the most part, it's just kind of like whatever makes sense off the cuff.
Yeah, I think Robert Tables over on Twitch, they said something kind of like how I roughly do it. I just rephrase it slightly. They said to read their little comment. I said, I use, and you could imagine a person feeling X in the face of this massive Y, rather. Or it could just be a simple thing of like, some of you might feel XYZ way. It doesn't necessarily mean that you all have to feel this way, but some of you might feel scared. I don't like doing that, but some of you might, or an individual in this situation might feel XYZ. It's up to you on how you want your character to kind of feel.
I think
You know?
that's descriptive versus prescriptive.
Yeah.
You're describing a scene rather than like prescribing this is how you all feel, right?
Yeah.
This may make somebody feel this way. It is a terrifying thing, but so that's a description rather than a prescription of you feel this way. Yeah.
Because what if my character doesn't fear anything? They're just a badass. They do what they want.
But I have advantage on saving throws against being frightened.
Yeah.
You see, when my character's parents died, leaving me an orphan, I learned no fear.
It reminded me of one of my first campaigns where I'd be like, "Oh, this is a truly terrifying thing," and the paladin would always be like, "Can't be frightened." You know, it's just.
Oh man, roll for feelings. Someone said. Oh man. All right, everybody. We're going to go into the little closing thoughts and statements. So, what I always do, so any of my guests, Jordan, you know this whole thing. If you want to repeat exactly what you said before, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But I give it where you guys can sort of shout yourselves out, go to basically tell us what you're working on, where we can find you, all that stuff. But at the end of it, what would be your advice or that sort of thing that's kind of rules to kind of live by when it comes to like just sort of either being a DM, just life in general, all that stuff. Just a closing statement or a closing sort of bit of advice for the likes of our people. So
Sure. So shout out to what I'm doing. I've been doing a lot more reviews of third-party content because I've realized there really is a lot of great publishing content from third parties that could give Wizards of the Coast a run for their money, and I want to kind of enable more people to embrace that. So that's something I've been working on. So lately I've been doing more reviews, and I'll have a few more coming out of just some third-party stuff that's been cool. That's been one thing, but my wife and I are starting to do streaming more, maybe like once a month, just to have fun hangouts, talking D&D and brainstorming, and that's been a lot of fun. And we might open up a shop soon, like what Taryn did, doing a Shopify. So that kind of stuff will be fun. Otherwise, with D&D, like just it's easy to go online and fill your head with expectations, but you'll be much happier if you just follow your heart and you don't build up too much expectation. Go in expecting just to have a good time, and you'll do well. And a lot of the time, that's good advice for my real life too. Not have too high of expectations and just explore what happens. That's what I think.
I guess I can go.
Looks like he's muted by accident, which brings I think it's
yeah,
funny because last time
I do that all the time.
That's ironic because last time you had me do that little blurb, I said not to fear silence, so I was not afraid of you being muted for a little bit.
Oh my God. Every single, I'm telling you, we're gonna make a bingo card for this. As many times I've been muted, but Taryn, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah. So yeah, shout outs to me. I love that. I'm currently it's basically the class is done, but I'm in the polishing design phase of my Vanguard, waiting on some art assets to export for that, and that's going to go up over on my Shopify. And then next up, I've got 2 classes I really want to make happen. The first one is the Sovereign, which is like everybody's wanted to play. Like either you want to play a Disney princess or King Arthur, whatever. I'm trying to give you the tools to like you being a ruler is your class. So there's that, and then the other one I've got lined up is the Zodiac, which is embracing more of the divination, ritual casting, cosmic magic side of D&D, since Wizards of the Coast won't just give us astral cosmic magic yet. Not even in Spelljammer. They could have given us so many more spells that had to deal with like stars and whatever. Nope, no spells. Didn't do it. No subclasses. Anyways. So that's kind of my exploration into that. But so I stream on YouTube and Twitch. I do the game design process, all that. I'm actually working on a few layout gigs right now. So if you're interested in getting into D&D game design, or you want to learn how to do things like the Adobe Creative Suite, hey, come check it out. Because you might learn how to make some stuff, and then you might pick up a skill for your resume. So, yeah.
Awesome. Trevor, where can they find you?
On the YouTubes, I do all sorts of various things regarding D&D and other tabletop role-playing games. I do module guides and general DM advice. And if you join my Discord, you can hop in on all of the games that I'm running. I'm running a ton of one-shots. Not only am I running 5e, but I'm also running other games. And actually today, I'm actually going to be running a 0th level one-shot where everyone gets to play a bunch of peasants. And they're all losers and nobodies, and they all get to go on an epic adventure and they no longer are nobodies, they become somebodies. My 2 little bits of advice here would be: 1, D&D is not the end-all be-all. Look at other systems, because maybe a system has a certain tone, feel, setting, or theme that D&D maybe just can't provide for you. And 2, ultimately, when you show up to any session, whether you're either DM or the player, tell yourself, I am going to have fun and I am going to facilitate fun for others. Because as we mentioned before a little while ago, sometimes people forget about the fun part of the game. And that really sucks. You know, I don't want to play with people that don't facilitate fun. And I know you don't want to not facilitate fun for others. So remind yourself every time, I'm going to have fun and I'm going to facilitate fun for others. And no matter what happens, if you forget rules or, flub dice or whatever, doesn't matter so long as you're having fun and you're providing fun for others.
Epic. Awesome stuff. All right. So that being said, thank you to all of the guests once more for being able to be on the show. You guys were fantastic. We had an awesome sort of panel for today. Also, thank you to all the lovely viewers over on Twitch and YouTube. I hope that this was helpful or valuable to each and every one of you, as we were able to show you exactly a little bit or kind of under the hood of how we kind of run our games or how we kind of feel about certain things, to really just show a little bit of perspective and at the end of the day, enhance our games to the best that they can possibly be and have fun while doing it. So thank you guys again. Thank you to all the viewers. I guess real quick, as we're doing this whole sort of live streaming sort of thing, I'm going to basically mute stream for a bit. We're going to talk for a bit, guys, and then I'm going to keep on going on with the likes of the whole rest of the show, just so you guys are aware. Alrighty, so we'll see you guys in a bit. Have a good one, y'all. Have a good one.